going to be the shader show and tell. I'll get things started with a shader I made today at work. So I kind of don't understand how this works. Kind of take you through the process.
Okay.
So at first, what I was doing was where is the So I was taking the view direction and plugging it into here, and that kind of worked.
How do you explain the view direction?
It's like the direction that you're looking at the thing.
Plugging into cosine?
Yeah. And so it was kind of working, but so what I'm trying to make is a shader that you can see the texture when you're looking straight at it, but as you kind of tilt, it kind of fades to black. And that totally works with the view direction, but the problem was it was getting some weird stuff from like world position. So as it rotated, it's getting like smaller and bigger. And it's hard to see in that, but in the game it was like kind of weird. Like it would shrink when I wasn't looking in a cardinal direction. And so I spent a long time trying to figure out what was wrong with the view direction, and apparently I just didn't need it. I could just plug in ones to the cosine. And I'm using a Fresnel thing to get this outer ring that kind of... Whatever. I just totally crashed it. Okay. Cool. But I'll show you the end result here. So I was making it for a VR game. I have a scope on this gun that's using a render texture. And so I didn't want it to look like there was just a camera projecting on a screen on that texture. I wanted you to have to actually look down the scope. So that was the first attempt. And
wait, I'm sorry. Is that a wooden barrel scope?
Oh yeah. Listen, I'm waiting on assets. It's programmer art. It's just the asset we had.
Never change it.
And so then I like smoothed it out, so it's more of a, and the GIF kind of messes it up. It's actually like a smooth gradient. It's not those bars.
Wait, hold on.
The peanut butter.
The peanut butter. Yeah.
The GIF. So yeah, it looks pretty cool in VR because you can't just like aim around corners like you could before. So you actually have to like line up, and since there's two cameras, if you have both eyes open, it looks kind of weird because you're getting that like two different areas where it's masking out. So you actually have to close one eye to get like a good view of what you're looking at. So yeah, that's the shader I made this morning. I don't know how it works. I think I got real lucky, I think.
So this shader's 101.
Well, that's the nice thing about Shader Forge. You can just kind of start hooking stuff up and seeing how it works.
So are you running your scene twice for that, or what do you do?
Well, I mean, that is how the Vive works. It's basically two cameras.
For the render scope. That means you render your scene 4 times.
Yeah, there's a render texture. There's like another camera on the end of the gun. So it is rendering twice, but it's only rendering a little bit because the field of view is like 0.1. And we have pretty decent occlusion maps baked into that scene. Yeah.
Sure. Hey. Oh, God. All right. So I ordered mine in rough order of complexity. This one this one is pretty straightforward, but I made it for Bobby asked about an outline. And so this is basically a Fresnel on a sphere, so you can kind of get it to glow around the edges. And the way you make it to outline is you put a floor into, and this is all it's doing. You give it a floor, and then you've got to like increase this value to quite a bit. And so now we should get, there we go. So now we have a nice, and so you can see it better on like a, well, maybe not this one.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So you can see like it's not a like a true mesh or like Illustrator style outline because it's using the Fresnel, which is a computation of the the.
It's also an inline.
Was that?
It's drawn on the inside.
Yeah. So like it looks great here, but then like this is like, well, that's not too.
I mean, it looks cool, but it's not.
It looks cool, but I mean, yeah.
It looks like I would eat that donut.
Yeah. Any questions? Great.
So no, actually I do.
Damn.
Yes, I have questions. So that what I can't read it because it's fuzzy and I'm not wearing glasses. What's the node that all three of the things are going into?
This one here?
Yeah.
It's just a lerp.
Oh, just a lerp.
It just
Okay.
takes from one color to the other color.
Using that.
Yeah, using this. Well,
Excellent.
this is probably the better way to view it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That does actually make more sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's close that.
Like, you messed around about like the outline like input and the actual.
Yeah, and what that
it's
does.
buggy.
It's
maybe not buggy. It's just weird.
It's just janky.
Yeah, they're actually on 3 different modes in the menu options. So if one's not working for you, there are 2 other options on that.
So there's something in Shader Forge called straight up outline width, and what that does, if I remember correctly,
on the cube, you can really see.
do I need an outline color too?
Oh yeah, you can just copy that, or one of those.
Take this blue. Oh.
It's a big outline.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, okay. So it's just a single node.
So what that does, it actually renders the mesh twice. It renders an inverse copy of the mesh first, and then it renders the actual mesh again over it. And so the problem with it is like, see, if you don't have your faces set up or your vertices welded or separated correctly, you get some jank. But yeah, so for like really for smooth, quote unquote, smooth objects, it works pretty well, and you don't get that that like swimming effect that you get with the regular outline. So that's it's a way to do it, definitely. But it is rendering the mesh twice, and that can be a problem potentially. Let's see. This is the shader I'm using in Vienna Automobile Society that actually that Steve helped kind of make work correctly. So like most of this garbage is him. But basically what it does, maybe I should have brought one of my models, but it just renders a very hard light facing color and a very hard shadow color to get that like two-tone poster effect look that the game has. And then all the various things do is just kind of adjust where the shadow is on the model, and then like I could have multiple banded gradients kind of do its thing there, and I really only have 2 in the game. So ultimately what it's doing is just taking 2 colors, lerping them, and then the lerp value is this like really crisp line, and all that's done is using the light direction and normal direction. But my game doesn't have lighting or shadows or anything, although it is using like there's a light object in the scene, and that's just telling the shader what direction to light the objects in, so they all like look like they're being lit from the same direction, and they all behave correctly, but they're not actually adding in any light information. And then this one is kind of similar to that. This is a skybox that makes a banded gradient sky. So you can have like a cool like neon sunset type of thing if you really wanted to. Why is this not in? Yeah, no.
This would be applied to like a skybox or just a
yeah, so this
background?
this would specifically be like a skybox texture. Nope. Create real. And then I think it's in window lighting. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah, and then this would be Shader Forge. Shit, what did I call that? Sky test. Sky test. Yeah. So now this is our sky. Yeah. And so it's the exact same concept. It just renders banded gradients for the sky, which I was going to do in Vienna, and then that didn't work out. So all right, mesh deformation, which I think Bobby asked for, or someone asked for.
No, I always ask for mesh deformation.
Someone asked for mesh deformation. So, well, that's kind of weird. Oh, right, because I don't change the sky box.
Leave it. Great.
Where the hell is the sphere, though?
Oh,
there it is. Okay. Don't look behind the curtain. So basically, what this is doing, this is very simple. It's just taking a normal map, and a normal map is three-dimensional coordinates baked down into an image. And so it doesn't quite show up too well because you don't see wireframe in here. So all this is multiplying is it goes into a vertex offset input, and then you just apply, and you can sort of see like this texture map is being applied to in three-dimensional space to the vertices of this plane, and it's really, you really need like a super high res or a good like normal map to kind of get the idea of it. Like this would be janky as hell. But yeah, because a normal map is three-dimensional information, and because a vertex offset takes in three-dimensional information, you can do some fun, crazy stuff with it. The next one I have, yeah. So what this is doing, all of this just makes a circle gradient, and then this is an oscillating alpha cutoff. Or not quite an alpha cutoff, but what it's doing is, if I replace this whole time nonsense with just a slider that we can control, basically what it's doing is, like, that's the effect it's having. What the sine wave is just doing this back and forth, and then that's just pushing straight into vertex offset, which means it's making the whole, when it's sending in a 1 value, it's making all the vertices in the mesh go 1, 1, 1, so they're all going in like an upward diagonal direction. If we multiplied this by, let's say, the normal direction, what it's going to take is, oh boy, so this is now using the direction of the vertex from the center of the model, and it's basically just, it's going to make it crash.
It's going to make it crash.
Oh boy. Yeah. So now each vertex is expanding out in like some wonky ass way. And we can just put this back in and make it oscillate for fun. So yeah.
Some sort of Tron thing.
Yeah. Because all the vertices in a model are interpreted by a shader, you can more or less do whatever you want to it. And have a lot of fun with mesh deformation. All right, questions before I just keep going? Great. This is a similar thing. This is what I use for the trees in my game. They don't animate, but they use this. This is a way to generate random numbers inside of a shader, which is you take the position of like an object position or the fragment position or the vertex position, and then you add that into a sine value, and that will kind of oscillate or give you a random number between -1 and 1. And then you do a whole bunch of junk to it, and now you can make you can make stuff kind of like, basically when this is applied to a low poly tree, it makes them look like the leaves are just kind of shaking back and forth without me having to go in and like animate that. And then none of the trees look like they're moving in synchronous time because they're all getting random numbers. They just kind of look like they're blowing. And then this is the same node from before that's giving me the color separation deal. So yeah, and this, all this basically just makes a noise, and then this is a directional value that I can, screw around with and make it do like really crazy stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, maybe this will work. Maybe this will look a little bit better on something. Nope, that looks
Nope.
pretty terrible. Oh, jeez. Okay, so if I set this back to 0, yeah. So if you imagine, like, this kind of looks, like something. Yeah, basically.
The funny thing is, it looks just like bark.
Yeah. From tip to toe.
I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay, so this was a fun one. Where the hell is the? Whoa! Wait a minute. Oh, fuck! I forgot to bring a texture for this. Damn it.
There's some sample ones.
No, it needs to be very specific textures. So basically what this was doing, I wanted a particle effect that was like a wind stream look. And so what I wanted, if you imagine like a big like horizontal bar, I wanted it to draw on and then draw off again. And so what it's doing is this all generates a sawtooth wave, which is just like, it just goes up to 1 and then 0, then up to 1 and then 0 in a linear fashion. And then it kind of does some remapping and it splits that into 2 different sections so that it can draw on and then the other half draws it back off. And if I brought the actual gradients that it was using, it would look correct, but I goofed. So anyway, do you have a question or I just imagine? No. Anyway, this drew an elliptical light field. So maybe if I find the posterize, yeah, here we go. Yeah, so what this does is, so whenever you have a light hot spot on an object, naturally it's circular because it's taking kind of, the values it's taking to fall the light value off on the mesh are equal in the same direction. And so what this was doing was, God, this is a clusterfuck. What this was doing, it was applying, let's see if I can find it in here. Oh, here we go, circularity. And we can put this posterize back in, you can visualize it a bit better. And it was kind of weird, it never really worked, and I never really did it for anything. But you can see the hot spot is kind of elliptical. It has a little bit of like an anisotropic kind of curve to it. And so you can make it do some, oh boy, yeah. So this, you can make it almost look like the hair streaks that you see in like really old Maya shaders. Or it just looks like a really janky, like you can have it like blink if you wanted. And basically what it does is it just takes, let's see, it gets the light direction and the normal direction and makes a cross product out of that, and that kind of stretches the circularity of the thing, and then it does a whole bunch of other stuff, apparently. So yeah, this was fun. I never did anything with it, but it was fun. Okay, yeah, and so this is what this shader does. Well, actually, this is the only interesting part of this. All of this is a normal Blinn-Phong lighting thing. If you what this oops shit. This here we go. What this normally looks like is this, which is just a smooth sphere, and you don't see the polygons. And the reason you do that is because, like, when you export a mesh from somewhere, you have all of the vertices, I'm blanking on the word, but they're basically not separated, they're not broken apart. So you get this smooth look, and it saves on memory information. But if you want to explicitly force to get that hard edge look so you see the seams in every polygon, you make this node tree, and then you plug it into the normal direction component into a shader, and then no matter what, it will come out with this hard look to it. And you can see, well, yeah, this is really subdivided, but you can see them in there. What else? But yeah, so this is really useful if, let's say, in like my next shader, Oh yeah. What I want, this is basically making a wave effect, and so what I wanted was a flat. Actually, I'll just make this a flat quad, and you can see exactly what I mean. Yeah. So, man, this lighting. Yeah. So to get the vertex offsets to move correctly, the vertices need to be welded, or else they're going to look like that cube that had the outline on it all like split apart individually. But because aesthetically I want that hard look, I don't want that softness to it, you apply this node tree to it and you get both of what you want, which is the vertices moving together and that hard, the hardness to it. And so, yeah, this is a really old shader because the whole plane is moving. And then eventually I just didn't put this in at all. So there you go. Yeah, I think that's it, unless anyone has questions.
Can't you just export a model with flat normals?
That will break apart the vertices, and they won't
oscillate
correctly. Yeah. And if you're being really picky, it adds data, because when you break apart the normals, it actually has 2 vertices or 3 or 4 vertices for every point. In the like a model viewer will treat them as one, but functionally they're more than one.
I think
so.
Daniel wrote a script to group those vertices together, move them manually through
Yeah.
the script. So that was like a long way to do it.
Yeah. That's definitely a way. Yep.
Mathematically, can you actually explain?
Nope. Literally cannot. No, so I know DDX and DDY is some kind of like really internal like shader language function that it's something to do with like it checks the 2 pixels and it compares them, like it checks the pixel, then it looks at the pixel to the left, or the pixel to the X and the pixel to the negative X, and sees if they're on different polygons, and then same with the Y. But no, I basically found this and then recreated it in Shader Code, or Shader Forge.
Does it involve calculus?
Probably. I mean, what doesn't, right? So I don't think so, to be honest. I think it's just like comparing like screen coordinates or something like that. So yep.
I missed any intro you gave. Are these shaders online somewhere that we can look at them?
No, not at the moment, but I can definitely put them all somewhere. I'll put them on the Slack right now. So yeah, you can definitely go in and poke around and break them up. Yeah.
And if anyone's not on the Slack, we'll go over that at the end and get you on there.
Yeah. Okay.
And in case it's not clear, so far everybody's been using this tool called Shader Forge, which is a node-based shader creation tool inside of Unity. So he's inside of Unity in a tool called Shader Forge.
So what's cool about Shader Forge 2 is it will compile to readable code, so you can experiment in it, and then oh boy, oh dear.
Notepad.
Yeah,
no.
I should have. Oh god, wait, hold on, it's opening. Oh Jesus. Okay, so it basically it's kind of janky, it's like, oh, node 7, yada yada yada, but it is like readable, and you can go in and learn from it by doing the code. I'm gonna close that.
Are those renamed to something useful if you actually named the node?
No. Yeah, those are like really internal variables. They're not one-to-one to the nodes.
Some of that stuff will carry through.
Some of it will, but not not all of it. I think the stuff you rename is renamed in the code, but like
That's what I meant.
but there are extra variables that it's using that are not named. Yeah.
You want to go next?
Okay. My name is Brennen Beck.
Hey guys.
And this is my YouTube channel, virtualprogramming.com. I've got a website with the same name. I started trying to learn game programming in XNA several years ago, and decided early on that I wanted to kind of share anything that I learned with everybody that was interested. I may not know a lot, but if I know one thing, maybe I can show that to somebody who doesn't know. And originally I started with the website, and then I decided to do a YouTube channel and do videos. And what I wanted to show tonight was I've got this series on HLSL, which is high-level shader language. And I was doing that originally in XNA, and it's almost identical in DirectX. I also do it in DirectX 11. Nowadays I'm doing OpenGL and GLSL, and I'm hoping to go that direction with the website and the YouTube channel at some point. Anyway, this HLSL series here, it's pretty long. I think most of these videos are averaging like an hour each, something like that. And throughout the whole series of the HLSL stuff, it basically just builds one shader, a blend Phong shader, which is kind of your most basic shader that you would use for all kinds of 3D stuff. Back in XNA, they had a shader that was built in called Basic Effect, and you could, you know, if you didn't want to get into HLSL and complicated stuff, you could just use that Basic Effect to do a lot of, you know, basic 3D stuff. And basically, I'm building that same shader in code here in HLSL. In the intro, it basically just kind of talks about how HLSL with XNA and HLSL with DirectX, how they're similar and how they're different. They're about 95% similar. Even though I'm demonstrating it with XNA and HLSL for XNA, I actually show, I think in that first video, the same shader actually for DirectX and the handful of changes that you need to do for that. I also show the XNA code in that first video, I believe, which for a lot of people, they may not be doing XNA. They might want to do DirectX or whatever, and they don't really care what the XNA code looks like. So you could just basically skip that whole first video if you're not interested in any of that. Then the second video, which is actually not on here, not shown on the screen, is basically just kind of talking about how it's all done with triangles, and basically you're just drawing triangles and shading in the areas between the three corners of the triangle. And then it moves on to the part 3, which is basically your most basic HLSL shader, where you're just sending a single color, and it basically creates a silhouette effect. You can turn the 3D model and see that it's 3D model, but it's just it's like a shadow, it's a silhouette. And then it goes on to garage shading in part 4, which is what gives it its basic 3D look. And again, all these are building one off the next. So you're basically taking the exact same code and adding a little more to it, and adding a little more, and adding a little more. And then in part 5, it gets into the Phong shading, which is getting into specular highlights. And then in part 6 is blend Phong, where it gets a little bit more complicated. And then part 7 with the textured shading basically just shows how to add a texture, to use a texture color map on the 3D model. And it's really kind of a deep dive. I go line by line through the shader code and go step by step through the math behind it all. So it's really a deep dive both in terms of the code and the math. And I think if you go through the entire thing, you come away with a pretty deep knowledge of the blend Phong shader and how it works mathematically and through code. Also, like I said, I'm starting to do OpenGL now, and I have it's not on the YouTube here, but I have a GLSL version of this exact same shader. If anybody was interested in that, I'd be glad to give them a copy of the code. That's basically it.
Thanks. Hey, nice.
All right, so
Nice.
my laptop runs pretty shitty for the project, so yeah. So I created a video, and
I go through a few shaders, but I also try and give context to why.
The show is about my lighting system. And so first I'm going to explain kind of why I needed it. So this is kind of a conventional outdoor scene in a game. It's lit by a single directional light. And, you know, it looks pretty good. But you'll notice in some areas, like behind here, no light are hitting these shapes, and so it's hard to make out detail. It's hard to make out these shapes. And, you know, that's usually not a problem in most games. Because as you can see, most of it looks pretty good. It's just like those little areas that are a problem. But in Arms of Telos, it's zero gravity and there's no up or down. So sometimes you do spend a lot of time looking at the backside of objects, like under objects, right? Like you're never under the ground here, but in my game, you can go to the back of pretty much any surface in the game. And so I needed a lighting solution that kind of wrapped around objects, made all angles look more interesting. And for a while, I had two directional lights, basically just facing different directions, lighting objects from both sides. And, you know, that worked okay, but eventually I wanted some more control, and lights just weren't going to cut it. And so you'll actually notice if I turn off this light, only the left one was illuminated by that light. This one wasn't using the light at all. And so what this one actually uses is a gradient. So if you go down here, this gradient right here is providing most of the lighting data, right? And right now it's just emulating this current situation, this current kind of scene. But let's see if I grab this, I can throw in a new gradient and instantly it updates the lighting to reflect that new gradient. And these gradients are just normal image files in Photoshop. There's nothing special about them. And they just give you more control. So if you notice, you know, it looks pretty good over here, but back here it's pretty flat. And this one, you know, I have more control. I can add this kind of cool back glow behind it. And so that comes in handy when players need to have something interesting to look at any angle and can't rely on there being lights pointed in every direction, because that's just not how most games are built. So we can continue to the actual multiplayer scene. So the next thing I want to show is how I basically color the environment. Right now you'll notice it's mostly white. There's some lighting, but that's about it. If we press play, so you notice everything's colored now. And you'll also notice that it changes from green to purple over here. And so with this example, it's an example where the shader itself is actually pretty simple for this effect, for the coloring effect. I'm using vertex colors for this, and so it's basically,
this shader's a mess. This component is simple.
It's basically as simple as multiplying by the vertex color. For this color effect, that's basically all the shader is doing, is taking the vertex color and multiplying that to
the rest of the stuff is like fine tuning.
The real magic comes from the tools I built around that shader to make this kind of work. So if we go up to the manager, go down here. So basically, I'll turn this on so we can see changes in real time. I have sets of objects, right? So this purple to green, a lot of stuff is being affected by this, but we'll play around with the space rocks. So there is a gradient, and that's where you basically set this stuff. And then there's just the collection of renderers that are affected by this. And there's a couple other options. So is binary is basically just two colors if you're on one side, because it's a multiplayer game, so there's an enemy side and a friendly side. So this binary would be useful for like team colors. If there's team colors and I want to identify an object as belonging to that team, then I'll use binary because I don't need in-between colors for that. But yeah, to change this, it's simple as modifying this stuff. You can see it changing things in real time. And what's also useful about this is it's a multiplayer game, and I want your teammates to be blue, to be a friendly color, and the enemies to always be red, and I want your base to always look friendly and the enemy base to always look hostile. And some people have to spawn on the left side, some people have to spawn on the right side. So because I'm doing this with vertex colors, I can change it at runtime, and so friendly is always looking friendly, enemy is always looking like an enemy. For a while it looked pretty much the same throughout, but I'll show you a fly through and look at the skybox. So one of my other shaders will take the player position relative to the center and then use a gradient to shift the skybox to different colors, and that gives each outdoor area along kind of the lengthwise of the map, a different feel. Like this is obviously the enemy side because it's pink and scary looking, I guess. So the way this works is I have a gradient for the skybox as you progress, and then I have a value that kind of determines how much of that gradient to show, which is this localized percent thing. So if we show the entire gradient, then it doesn't shift when we move because we have nothing to shift along, right? Because we're showing the entire thing, we can't move anywhere. We're at the edges already. And then as you make that smaller, you can see it'll get redder over here, but I'm still seeing a lot of it. So I think I had it at like something like 11% or something. Position factor will update in real time. That's just the player position. Let's see. And then this other stuff down here is for whenever you're on these spider surfaces or magnet surfaces. It will blend in this image right here, which is just a gradient with some white lines. It'll orient that to the direction of the spider surface, so you'll see it's always bright up top, and these rings are aligned with your view. But if I go over here, now the darkness is over there and the lightness is up here. And this helps orient players with their mouse look. I explained that in the last development video. I'm not going to get back into it. I haven't looked at this in a while, so I'm not sure how pretty it is, but see, this one's not too bad. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, this is spider direction. This is basically whenever you land on one of those surfaces, it'll change this value so that it knows how to orient this graphic in here. This stuff is the shifting stuff. Direction, it'll go to -1 if you're on the other team, so that your friendly sky is blue. But yeah, and then here's the localized percent. This is just kind of assigning the gradient to that sphere. Yeah, I don't use Unity's regular skybox either. I have over here is the skybox sphere, and so there's a camera in here that orients to the same direction as your player camera, and it's just kind of off to the side. Your player camera can't see this, so you don't see another universe whenever you look over here. But as you can see, if I go over here, this sphere over here will change colors to reflect where you are in the map. Yeah, so remember the other side was green, kind of a daylight look, and this place is more like a neon city. So that's all with those gradient controls that I mentioned earlier. None of this was kind of hand-picked. It was all, I mean, it was hand-picked, but using that gradient, so it was a lot quicker. I didn't have to select each one of these surfaces and, set a color or whatever. I just had one gradient, and I had a group of objects, and I said, obey these colors. And that's basically it. So hope you enjoyed that. Hope that was useful. Let me know if you have any questions.
So do you have an ambient occlusion in that? And if so, how did you get that?
Some of the meshes do have ambient occlusion, and that was just from Blender. So just generate in Blender, apply it as a texture, blend it in with, that was a lot of the, so the rest of that really monster of a shader earlier, a lot of that was like apply the ambient occlusion, but also give me control over the contrast of the application of that ambient occlusion. Give me control over exactly how much of that gradient is applied. I can go from just all white to 100% of that, or somewhere in between. The game is pretty soft on lighting, so a lot of times I'm somewhere in the middle.
Looks beautiful.
Yeah, no, the orientation when you actually like stick on the surfaces.
Yeah.
That is incredibly subtle, but I think that's really awesome.
Did you have to do math to get the gimbal lock lines to follow, or is that just naturally a thing that worked out?
If you orient it vertically on the skybox, that's just natural.
Nice.
So, yeah, I just take the up direction of that surface and then match that with the direction that texture is painted on the skybox sphere.
Right.
And then, yeah, they just line up. So if you move your mouse right and left, it'll actually follow those lines. And in my last game development video, I explained kind of why that helps orient players while they're trying to shoot people.
Question. So earlier on, you made it sound like you were actually like updating the vertex colors of all the meshes in the game. Are you actually doing that?
So not every frame. Only if I had that checkbox checks will they update every frame.
Okay.
I just do it when they change teams.
Okay.
To get them on the right side.
Okay. And then for the orienting effects, whenever you get on those sticky surfaces, are you doing that through just some global parameters, or like how are you like going about doing that? Is that just like a global parameter where you're just passing in like the player's last like grounded position?
Yeah. So I have
painting things. Or?
Yeah, I have a script called like Skybox Shifter or something like that. So whenever the local, like it's a multiplayer game, so when the local client lands on something, it'll just tell Skybox Shifter my new spider surface up direction.
Oh, okay.
And then that feeds into that float 4 in the shader, and then paints orients the black and white file up there. To blend in.
So to repaint all the vertex colors, are you like getting into like the static batching in Unity, or are you or do you just like have like you just make those meshes dynamic and you're just going through and painting them?
So right now they're dynamic because you can't change vertex colors of a static mesh. It'll just not let you. I do have plans to you can actually basically set things to static at runtime in a group. And so what I plan to do is, it's weird. They let you set a group as static, basically combining it into one mesh so that the renderer can be more efficient about it. But you can't unset it. So what I plan to do is make one copy, make a static copy of that, do the other team, make a copy of that, and then just enable, disable the whole thing, I think. I haven't tried that yet, but that's what I'm going to try to do. But in this version of Unity, I've noticed that occlusion, like static batching and occlusion culling, they're not like working quite as advertised. So like I actually find sometimes I have better performance without even having the occlusion culling enabled. So I'll experiment more with that, as also I'll experiment with other newer builds of Unity. This is still 5.2.2, I think. Is that it?
Thanks, Justin.
At the next show and play in like 13 months,
All right.
Okay.
Hey.
How many people have heard of gradient mapping before?
Yeah, he was just talking about it.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Did I miss that?
Yeah.
No, I don't know if I was. Go ahead.
No, do something different.
I think this is different than what you're talking about. Just do it.
I need you to explain this to me.
Don't let your shaders be dreams. All right, so gradient mapping, the first time I ever heard of it was when Valve did a tech talk about Left 4 Dead, the original Left 4 Dead. And one of the things that they did with that game was have a ton of different zombie variations. And one of the variations they had was texture variation, but they didn't want to have a different texture for each variation. So they did gradient mapping. And what gradient mapping is, I'll show you the textures that I'm using here. The basic concept is that you have one texture that looks generally like what you think a texture should look like. If I could open Photoshop, that would be cool. And then you have, and that's a black and white texture, which is kind of like a key. And then you have another texture. Okay, this is my key. So what I'm working with here is a little model dude of like a soldier that I made just before coming here. So sorry if it looks kind of shitty. Let me pull him in. Where are you, little soldier man? Yeah, so there he is. Go back to the origin. And so this is my texture key, you could call it. I'm going to be combining it with this, which are my color variations. So I only made 4 different color variations. You could make as many as you want. And the advantage of gradient mapping is that each color variation only takes up a single strip of pixels. This is a 256 by 64 pixel texture, so I could fit 64 different color variations in this single texture. You can get a ton of variation. That's what Valve did. So the way this works is you open up the shader forge, you load the shader. We're going to be modifying the UVs of the texture itself. So let me pull in the texture. Doot.
I did not know you could do that.
Oh, yeah.
It really is.
All right, so so the first thing we're going to want is an append node, because we're going to be coming up with an x coordinate and a y coordinate. The x coordinate that we're going to be plugging into this gradient comes from here, and I'll sort of explain that once I do it. And then the y coordinate is just going to be 0 to 1 that tells it which of these 4 to use. Plug that into there, plug this into base color. That's it, we're done. Come on.
Yeah, it's been having some trouble.
Machine can't handle this level of shading.
Just exit out.
I'm concerned about
I hope it saved it. So I'm going to create a material that uses that shader. Yes, yes.
You should probably kill Photoshop.
No. There we go.
Nice.
All right. So, this is our material applied to the dude. And as you can see, if I actually named my parameters, you can see that I can switch which color scheme we're using. So like the first one is sort of a this actually isn't correct, and I think I know why. I think it is gamma correcting the textures. So this is an important thing. If you pull black and white textures into Unity or Unreal, I believe it gamma corrects them for high dynamic range lighting. I'm throwing out words that I only like halfway know.
Edit player settings.
Sorry, what?
Edit player settings.
Oh no, I'm trying to change it on the texture itself.
color space is going to be texture. The texture drops down. Try advanced.
Yeah, there we go.
Look at all those pictures.
There's like another 10 of those, and like a CSGO lotto kind of thing.
Might as well just change the whole project. Yeah.
All right, go ahead and what was the other thing?
Edit. Clear setting. No, it's project setting.
Sorry.
Other settings.
I'm used to doing this in Unreal.
Yeah. So okay, color space gamma at the top.
This might be more correct. All right, so let's go back to that shader. Still not behaving exactly as I want it to. That's not the problem. I'm not that worried about that. But anyway, let me just describe what's going on in the material, because that's the interesting part. So, load. All right. So this key texture that we had that we were using, each area of the model is a black to white value. And that's getting turned into an x coordinate for our gradient. So if we,
I see.
If we look at our gradient, we can see the x value is, let's say on this texture it's black. So right on this color variation, that's going to be very dark blue. And areas that are white are going to be on the right, which would on this one be very dark red. On this one it would be brown, etc., etc. So this determines, or do you see what I'm saying here?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So you're saying that you can use in the black and white, it's really 256 shades of gray that you can select, and that's
that you have access to. Yes. That would be an excellent book, by the way. So yes, you could do up to 256 different colors. The problem is, and you can actually see it happening on here, you've got this artifacting going on, and you can't get rid of that. This is fundamentally going to be a lower resolution solution to having lots of color variation. There's just no getting around that. But you can get a shit ton of color variation using this. What are you going to ask, Tosh?
I was curious, in practice, are you just creating the gradient values with what colors you want, or do you just have to range down the colors you want in Photoshop?
I'll show you exactly what I'm doing. And it's handy that Photoshop has a tool built in for doing exactly this thing.
If you're not using all 256, why are you using gradients instead of color blocks?
What do you mean by color block? Oh, on the on this,
like
I could be using color blocks. There's no particular reason for this example to be using gradients, except that I can, like, if I just slide the slider thingy.
Well, yeah, he can use a float and get kind of the in-between value.
Yeah. And I could actually. Well, that's actually okay. So what that's doing?
No, that's the
yeah, that's going blurring between the different variations. But I could also offset this. So let's say I plugged in a power node here. That's not a power node. Let's try a power node. There. Now I can further tweak it. If you want that. But generally the reason that I work with gradients is because it's easier, and this will show you what the fuck.
You did open another man's Photoshop.
All right, so the way that I created the variations is I don't really need you, actually. I started with this. I blocked out what areas I wanted to be different colors. So like the jacket, I wanted to be one different color. All of this black area is like the leather, so the gloves, the boots, the belt, that's a different color. And then I had little stripes, epaulette stripes, and the shirt, the undershirt is its own block, and then the skin is this white area up here. And then, so once I had those blocked out, you just go to create layer type, and you're going to create gradient map. And that gives you a gradient map here, which is currently just black to white, which doesn't really change what we have very much. But we're going to go in here and say rainbow.
Nice. Wait, no, it's perfect.
Sorry.
Exactly the way it needs to be.
So, and I paid close attention when I was making this to what exact shades I was using. So, the white is white, the black is black, this is 50%, this is not selecting anything. This is 50% gray, this is 25% gray, and this is 75% gray. So I already know that, which means that when I go in here and start working on my gradient map, I can just set colors at 0, 25, 50, 75, and 100. And those are the colors that I'm going to get exactly. So this is already a really clowny looking color variation, but it is a color variation. If I wanted all the leathers, which were set to black, if I wanted them all to be like a dark leathery brown, I just set that. And then if I want the coat to be like a darkish gray, trying to compare the color on my screen to the color on the monitor. So anyway, once I'm happy with this, then to create the actual texture of my color variations, all I do is create a new layer and then create a gradient black to white, stretching across. And then if I have all my different color variations, I can just say you go there. God damn it.
Cancel bottom right.
Thank you. So anyway, and that gives me the ability to set up the actual color variations on that texture. And like I said, you can have technically 1 per pixel of height. You probably want to give it some amount of padding, so like 3 pixels at least is what I would go with. But that means that on a 256 by 256 texture, you could easily have 64 different color variations. Any
so say you wanted to do something, obviously your gray pack texture is very flat colors.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to have in
gradients
or like details and like folds in the fabric, say if you're doing something with the fidelity of like Warcraft, and you wanted to do things or maybe like skin tours, how would you work that texture in with this? Would it just be a multiply after the fact?
So part of the problem with this is that let's say you want a shadow baked into your diffuse texture. What that's going to come out being, and what sometimes I do is I'll say, okay, this section is going to be the block of color for the pants. And I can say, all right, at the far left end is going to be pants in shadow. At the far right end is going to be pants in lightness. So I can define what color the shadow part of the pants should be and what color the light part of the pants should be. That works fine, but let's say you want a blood spatter on the pants. So now you're combining two different chunks of this, one for the pants and one for the blood. And in the transition period, you're going to have artifacting. So the more complicated the diffuse texture you're trying to get, the worse it's going to look, the more artifacty it's going to look. If you go back and play Left 4 Dead 1, there isn't a whole lot of the textures they use for the zombies aren't exactly clean. They're very grimy looking to start with. And there's not a whole lot of detail that they pump in there. It's mostly like a flat color for pants with blood spattered on. Actually, though, one of the things they did in that game was project blood using volumes, but that's a different thing. One of the other things that you want to do is anytime you've got a area of light transitioning into an area of dark, you're going to get really visible artifacting. So a lot of the times what I try to do is, like let's say I have it set up where I want the far left side to be the boots or whatever, and I want the area right next to that to be the pants. I will set it up so that the light area of the boots is right next to the light area of the pants. And then the dark area of the pants is right next to the dark area of the shirt or whatever comes next. So this does require a bit of planning and a bit of work, and the trade-off, and you lose some quality, some fidelity, but the trade-off is you can get an enormous amount of variation, and it's really, really easy to make those color variations. And if you want new variations, you don't need to change the original texture. All you need to do is add a new line in your gradient key, whatever texture. Any other questions?
Thanks. Thanks.
Has anyone not signed in on this spreadsheet? Oh boy.
Anyone else? Spreadsheet?
All right, cool. I think I'm good to go. So I'm just gonna get started here.
Hey.
Alrighty, so I want to get to all this stuff because it's kind of fun and cool things and stuff, you know. But I'm actually going to start out with something really, really boring, but I think really, really important. So the way I've tried to approach shaders is actually to try and frame it in the mindset of compositing, like you would in Photoshop or like you would in like After Effects, for example. And the reason I say that is because shaders are super duper powerful, and you can do a whole lot with very, very little. And I think foundationally or fundamentally, utilizing basically just the color values and then masking like you would in Photoshop with layers, you can just create a ton of different variability and all different kinds of stuff. So what I'm going to show here is what I think is probably one of the most like powerful and useful little node trees that I've ever put together and that I've ever utilized. And it's really, really simple too. So the basics are you get a black and white texture. I'm just using a render cloud here. And this is just going to be a black and white 0-1 mask that I'm going to use for all different kinds of transitions. So the first thing is that I'll just add either -1 or 1 to the shader itself. So that basically ensures that if I pump it all the way to one side, it's going to be completely white. And if I bring it all the way to the other side, it's going to be completely black. So I have total control over the entire light range of that texture. And then going beyond that, I'm also going to basically run it through a power function to exponentiate it. And the result is going to be that I can get these really, really hard fall-offs or really, really soft ones. And so outputting that with just these two controls and whatever your mask, whatever your texture might be, you've got a ton of variability and a ton of control over exactly what that's going to look like. And so you can see, like, you can get all different kinds of transitional effects.
just using that. And I use this in almost every single shader that I've ever made. I think it's really, really powerful. So to transition to this stuff, almost all of these are built off of almost entirely just that function. And I wanted to kind of break them down and show how exactly it plays into all of the effects that you're seeing here. Nick, I know you also wanted to know how I was doing the snow, so I figure I'll start with that one first.
Well, I asked you, and
yeah, I
you
wanted
just didn't
to
respond. So.
I said, no, I was like, not, and then I was like, I'll save it for this. So,
no, you didn't even. No, you didn't even say that. You
I
just
said not.
You just
I said
no.
NOP. Go back and check it, bro. Okay, so this is a kind of a recreation of a snow shader that I put together for Inner Space a little while ago. It's not entirely the same thing that I use in the game, but it's pretty close. It has most of the core components. But the important thing here is that the snow is procedural. So if I take this object and I rotate it, you'll see that the snow is still on top, no matter which way I orient the object. Do what?
There's snow on the bottom there.
You mean here?
No.
What? I'm confused, Nick. I don't see any snow on the bottom.
What?
Oh, I guess right there. That's an upward-facing surface.
Yeah, Nick. Excuse me?
Jeez, Nick.
No.
What are you talking
go all
about?
the way to the. No, yeah, what's that?
That's green.
I don't see any snow.
It's grass.
God, you're so distracting. Jesus. Alrighty, so let me just open this one up really quick. Here we go. Cool. So, one more time. Here we go. And
what?
nodes, yeah, cool. If you guys aren't utilizing them, by the way, I highly recommend get sets. So get and oops. Where's your delete button? Delete. Here we go.
Hang on now. There's not lines there. How does that work?
Super useful for organization. Where's your delete button? There we go. So anyway, so basically what I've got here is a series of different individual functions. Most all of these output just a black and white value. Oop. Oh, thanks, buddy. Yeah, so most all of these output just a black and white value, and as a result, all of these are just going to be masks, just black and white 0, 1, right? And then once I've got all of those kind of put together, I've actually got a comp tree where I then append them and combine them to create exactly the output that I want. So I'm going to break it here, do a get set, and I'm just going to show off just a little bit about the snow itself. So snow mask, compile, oops, there we go. Cool, compile, that's it. All right, so just black and white, that's the only component that matters right now. So with this, what I'm doing is I'm getting a dot product between just the up vector and the normal of the geometry. And then with the...
I asked you if that's exactly what you did, and you said no.
Well, there's more to it than that. What do you think all this is?
Objection.
What do you think all this
I think
is?
you'll find.
All right, okay, well, anyway. It wasn't true at the time, but okay, anyway. All right, so the thing that I showed you all previously, the balance and then the fall off, I'm using it here too. And so you can see that works on gradients in general, just any black and white information. So you can control, and you can see the results like here, for example, right? So I can control exactly how much snow I want on that surface, as well as how much of, how strong I want that dividing line to be, or how bird poopy I want it to look, So effectively, that's just the same thing I showed you guys earlier. And then the only thing that I'm doing differently is I'm actually taking a texture coordinate, and that's the same just cloud texture, and I'm converting it to the world space UVs along the Z and X axes. So it's basically taking the texture, and instead of projecting it on the UVs of the model, I'm just laying it down like a piece of paper in the world, and then using this step function here to create this nice edge where anything above is solid and anything below, using this gradient transition, dips into this kind of nice PC effect that you get with the cloud texture in there. And so then taking that and plugging that right in, just black and white, obviously gets you this result here. So getting back to the compositing statement a little bit, these things, and I think Justin and Nick both touched on these earlier, lerps are super freaking powerful. and I use them all the time. So basically, like they said earlier, right? Like you have two top inputs and then a black and white control input. Yeah, just got to lerp right in there. But they're powerful because in combination, right?
Just
do it again. Cool. All right. So yeah, so in combination, I can tell the shader to, instead of going just from black to white, I can say where black values were. I want whatever color input I give it, and the same for the snow on the top. Why are these weird colors? Whoa. Cool. There we go. Alrighty. So using that to create the basic snow colors, applying some lighting that I've got going here, and then running that in to the standard lighting setup, and you generate this effect right here with a few like additional components. But again, the thing that I wanted to highlight here is that the control that I get by using that that kind of simple node tree lets me do like really large snow detail if these objects are kind of small, or I can get really small snow detail, and I can control exactly how much I want on it, or how much I want it to cover or not cover the surface. And so that's just kind of like one example of how I'm utilizing that information. So let's move on to some other stuff. Also, I'm not going to be able to like cover all of this in super details. If there's something in particular that you guys are curious about, let me know. I'll be happy to dive into it.
Are you going to post these up somewhere?
Some of them I can, not all of them. But yeah, sure, I can totally do most of that. Let's see. Let's talk about the fire dude.
You looking at me?
Kick. He might be, yeah. I'll talk about that one afterward. Yeah, he's totally looking at you. Cool. So this is going to be, I think, probably the fire shader. Yeah, got it. Cool. All right. So let's see. So the fire shader is actually really, really simple. There's not really a whole lot to this guy. The input information that I'm using for this are vertex colors. So black and white. Actually, I can just show you, honestly. Vertex color, do video, emission, boom. Just black and white information. That's it. So just like with the texture that I was using earlier, and just like with the gradient that I was also using earlier, because vertex colors also generate gradients, right? Everything that I'm using in here is exactly that same balance, fall off, node tree setup. So I'm using that to control the colors. So I've got two input colors, and I can control the balance of that, so how much of one versus the other, as well as the fall off between the two. And I can just invert that value really easily. I'm using that for the texture itself. Whoops. Let me see. Right, yeah. So I'm also using it for the vertex clamping. So something that Nick mentioned earlier and kind of covered was the vertex offset. So I'm basically doing that same thing here, but just in one direction up. And then I'm using the texture with the same kind of, XZ texture projection that I did with the snow earlier. I'm using that here to control which vertices move up and which ones are clamped. So the dark areas on that texture are going to be no movement, and then the light areas are going to be more movement vertically, right? But even here, right, controlling how sharp the fall off is between the high and the lows, I'm using fall off and balance, right? Like it's all the same thing. And all of these, again, just output black and white texture, or sorry, black and white masking information. So down here, I'm taking the texture, the black and white flame mask is what I called it, multiplying that by just an upward facing vector. And then I'm multiplying that by a value to control how much I want those to be displaced, so how high the flames get. And then I'm also taking the vertex colors and, again, using the same balance thing, clamping the spiky things here so that I get a more consistent flame here. And so if I change like the vertex clamp, you can see like I can control how much they come up, or how little I can really bring them up. Yeah, so there's quite a bit of control that you can get just using these two sliders. Yeah, and then I can also modify like the maximum offset, so really high. And also, just side note, that's kind of cool looking, right? Like you can do like, yeah, exactly, right? Like you can do like a Ghost Rider. Like there's your first steps right there. So I'm gonna leave Goku like that, and we're gonna move on to this one.
Real quick.
What's up?
Like the top of his skull doesn't seem to be, the vertices don't seem to be moving. How do you control that doesn't move yet the others do?
So that's gonna be those vertex colors again. So, lost it. Here we go. So let me see. Hang on a minute. Apologize. Whoop. No, come on. There we go. Okay, yeah, so that's going to be the vertex colors that are clamping that. So if I just plug in vertex color, again, to kind of show you where exactly this is at, you'll see that it's only happening on like the brightest areas along the head.
Oh, and the vertex colors you set in Blender.
Yeah,
okay,
those are just baked in
got it.
Blender. I'm sorry, I should have clarified that one. But yeah, so
where are you getting the vertex colors?
So no textures on this, no unwrapping or anything like that. It's just vertex colors that we're using. But yeah, so you can see if I take the, well actually, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, so I've got vertex clamp fall off and vertex clamp balance, right? So if I bring this up, so 0 is going to be basically the default values that it has. You can see that it's affecting the whole of the surface, and then if I change the fall off, so it's really, really crisp, only very specific areas are affected. Yeah, so those two functions are just particularly powerful when used in combination, and they can be used to create a whole ton of different effects. So I'll move on to these eyeballs because they're really cool. I do want to say that Nick, you were showing it off earlier, actually. That kind of eyeball blinky thing that you're doing.
Oh yeah.
Totally what inspired this. So thank you for that. I think this is a really cool thing, and y'all should totally use it because it works pretty well. So let me open this up. Are there any questions, by the way, while I'm going through this stuff? I know I'm going kind of fast. I don't want to like gloss over anything if you're interested in it.
Can you show that for loop again sometime?
Do what?
Can you show that for loop sometime?
Yeah, absolutely. Come on.
Can I take a picture of it?
There we go. Yeah, sure.
You just post it.
I can also just post it somewhere. I can do all of the above. But I would, like, if there's one thing that I would be like, all right, write this down and take a picture, it's going to be that one, for sure. So this guy is a bit of a larger shader, and it's probably not the most efficient way to do it. But in effect, I'm only really doing one thing in the shader, and then I'm just doing it a whole lot, So basically, I've got the view direction, which is the vector from the camera, and then the normal direction, just any face, just the outward vector, getting a dot product between the two, and I'm outputting that as just direction, because that's all that I need.
That's what I was trying to do.
So you can use this to create a Fresnel effect, which is that kind of like black on the edges, white in the front, So using that information, I can basically tell the shader that I want the brightest value to always be facing the camera because it's going to line up always with that camera vector, So no matter where I look, even in the shadows and everything, the eye is always going to look at me. And you'll notice that this is not the geometry that's moving, it's just the shader itself. There's no animation or anything happening here. So with this guy, it kind of breaks down into, let me see, I haven't actually touched this one in a while, forgive me. Let me see. Yeah, so basically, so I'm taking basically a radius. So I'm just defining the radius of one of these rings. Again, giving it a fall off, sharp fall off, getting that direction input, and by combining these values and all that jazz, I basically output another just single black and white mask. So let's see. If I put just that one, what do we get? All right, cool. Yeah. So with this one, you can see that it's just a Fresnel. I'm getting that black around the edges and white at the base, or white in the front. Excuse me. And that's for the base. If I go to pupil 1, for example, do it. Uh-oh. You can see I'm getting the same effect, but with some slightly tweaked parameters, and that's true for all of these. These are all just black and white masks that are slightly tweaked for different scales and different fall-offs. So from there, just like with anything else, just like you would in Photoshop or Illustrator or any kind of other compositing software, not Illustrator, excuse me, you just basically like layers just one on top of the other using that mask to let you control which area is apparent and which area is not through these lerps. So I can start with the base color and lerp between that and like the sclera color, which is the white of your eye. And then from there I can lerp between like the pupil color, the kind of like secondary color, I don't know what that's called, the outer edge of that secondary color, and then lerp that back into the sclera itself. So compiling all that together, you get this effect, and the thing that I love about shaders is that there's a ton of flexibility. So for example, I can change the sclera color to be whatever I want. I can change the iris color to be whatever I want, so maybe something like that. What color should this eye be?
Oh, totally red.
Red? Let's go red, let's do it. Freaking red.
There it goes.
And then I can like bump up the emission value on this, for example. If I had some bloom on here, you might be able to see it. Let's see, emission. Oh, maybe not, I don't know. Bloom's not working right now, but whatever. Some other fun stuff with this though is that I can control the radius of this. Like really, really cute or creepy eyes. So one of the things that we did in Innerspace, we have this giant crab boss creature, and we're using these to, instead of tracking the camera position, we're actually just giving it an X, Y, Z coordinate in space and having it track that. And so when we tie the plane's position to that X, Y, Z coordinate, they basically look at the plane as it flies by. They look at you as you fly by. So it's kind of a cool, neat effect, and it's super ultra cheated just by using some vectors and then, again, that same kind of node tree. So let me pull that back up. It's like the most useful freaking thing ever in the entire world, and I love it to pieces. So yeah, so in this case, I'm taking a black and white texture, adding a range from -1 to 1 to that to get it to go either all the way black or all the way white. Clamping that so it still stays within the 0-1 range instead of going actually to -1 or anything above 1, and then running that into a power with an exponent and just controlling the sharpness of that fall off. You can see you can get really, really hard, crispy fall offs on that, or really, really smooth, gentle ones. So we kind of make these transitions.
In effect, you're controlling brightness and contrast there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. I've seen them named a few different things in different editing software. I kind of landed on balance because 0 is the middle. You can tilt it to the left or to the right a little bit, and then I just prefer the term fall off, because sharp fall off, smooth fall off, But yeah, so this node tree here. Did you guys get the pictures? Anybody who wanted it? Cool. What's up, Daniel?
So on the eyeball, when you're doing the dot product to get the black to white raised mask, could you just use a frontal node?
Yes, I could. I believe the reason that I didn't was because ShaderForge's like Fresnel is calculated slightly differently, and so with this approach, I was actually able to normalize the values, which means that instead of it transitioning from 1 to -1, I have it transitioning from 1 to 0. So if I want to have any of these rings move across any portion of the eye, I can have it start at the very, very back of the eye and traverse the entire length of the sphere itself, instead of starting at 1, which would be in the middle, and going only forward from there and having no control over how far back it goes. if that makes any sense. So normalizing really helped with that. Let me see. Oh yeah, something else. Just a cool thing that I've started doing with shaders. I think maybe some of you guys would find it maybe useful. So I've got these guys, and these are actually just using where's my glow? There we go. These are actually just using a shader that I put together for inner space. So there's a lot in here, but the thing that I want to focus on is just this component right here. So this is the alpha mask that I'm using. So these objects have UV coordinates, but they're just projected from the screen outward. So white on top, black on bottom, and not unwrapped or anything like that. It's just a straight flat projection. And using the UV coordinates to generate just this standard gradient, and again using the same exact setup, fall off and all that kind of stuff, right? Running that in and then running that into the alpha input over here, the effect that you can get is this, where they fade out like this, and I can control exactly how sharp or soft I want that fade out to be. So the reason I've got this happening is because I really hate clipping. I really hate clipping in games, and I wish there were better solutions to it, and this is one of mine. If there's a way to avoid it, like this kind of stuff, I like to find kind of ways to do that, and I'm particularly fond of this one, right? So the benefit of this is that by making that bottom just a little bit transparent, and then controlling exactly where that fades off, you can actually incorporate the colors underneath the object into the object as it moves up. And so you can get away with kind of just sitting objects on top of other objects without worrying about any kind of real present visual clipping or intersection problems that you might get. Objects feel more seated, they feel more grounded, and it's just been a useful thing, and I thought maybe some of you guys could use it as well.
What kind of, can you explain clipping? What kind of problems
Yeah.
do you see?
Yeah, so let's see. This guy, I'm going to unlock this really quick. So it's just using an unlit shader. So say the ground is like this color, right? So there, I haven't quite matched them right, but I've got a deadline coming up or something, and I just need to get this thing out there, right? Where are you? Right. So if I'm placing these assets in the world, and I kind of see them like that, right? Like, that doesn't look very good. That doesn't convince me that this stalagmite is part of this landscape. It looks like something that I just sat on top of it or put down there, and that feels bad. Clipping at its core is just when geometry moves through other geometry, right? So that's not super convincing. That doesn't, feel particularly good to me. So what I'm going to do is using, and I mean, again, you can do this in a number of different ways, right? So I can change that base color to something that might match. So that kind of feels better, but I've got other lighting things happening on this object, and so they're going to, perturb the colors there, and it's not going to work in all cases and at all times, right? So literally just making it disappear at those spots makes that transition just really, really smooth. And suddenly, when I'm moving through the world, right, like that feels far more grounded to me, and that just causes my brain to not catch onto the weird clipping issues, Small thing, but I think it's pretty useful.
And you use a similar method for level of detail, right? Like things will fade out into gradient?
Yeah, that was actually something that Tyler put together. And just on that note, actually, so I came into shaders a little bit before I started working on inner space, but that was mostly, again, from the compositing side of things. The majority of the math that I learned was through Tyler, so thank you for that. I appreciate it, buddy.
And we actually got to get to Tyler soon.
That's true, too, yeah. But yeah, so using the LOD, you can tell it to basically dither out and in based on its distance to the camera and stuff like that. That's all I got, unless there are more questions. I just want to show some basic stuff.
We got it. So it looks better in GIFs?
No. We did it because we don't have to worry about transparency sorting, and it's more efficient and fuck transparency sorting.
Instead of overlaying and doing 2 pixels at once, it just renders one of them.
Yes. So one thing that we really like doing is using shaders to juice things. No audio. So something that happens here is they flash yellow. They get a little bit bigger right when you hit them. We do a lot of that through shaders. But anytime you want to like make a specific object do specific things with its shaders, you have to edit its parameters. And when you do that, you tend to create duplicates of materials. And then if you do that a lot of times, you create many, many, many duplicates. And a lot of people, they think that when they create the duplicate, then they put the old one back in when they're done with it, and they think they're done. But in Unity, when you actually create a material, it doesn't clean it up as garbage. It actually just leaves it floating until you get like a memory overflow, and it just crashes the game. So like you need to actually clean up your materials. So when you edit those values, you need to make sure that you're doing some smart things. And generally, I found myself writing like one block of code a lot of times for a lot of different things, and it's like 20 lines of code to like create the material, stop using the material, dispose of the material. I was like, oh man, like surely there's a much smarter way to do a lot of this, and I'm not gonna have enough time to actually dive into my code, so I'm gonna kind of show you guys something really, really fast, and then I'm probably gonna post on Git later and just post it in Slack, so you guys can look at its shininess. But yeah, so I do two things. If any of you guys have worked on any kind of game optimization, you guys probably know what object pools are. Object pools are classes that allow you to, oh yay. Oh yay. Okay. Sure.
No, it's gonna take forever.
Oh, was I supposed to say no?
I don't think you have an option.
If not, I'll talk about it and post it on Git. There's no way I'm gonna get through all my stuff. That's fine. So I do two things. I do object pooling so like let's say that we have a material that I know I'm going to create many instances of. I'll prepare like 6 instances of it right when the game launches. And then I use something called a material animator to fetch those on the run. And then just do stuff with objects very simply. So I can do something as simple as getting a game object saying I want to make this be shiny. So I just create an object and I pass it to it and I just say shiny and then it does stuff. Let's hope this works. So my little example script here is there's like 100 something spheres there. If it runs, that's not running. I need to assign a material to all these, I bet.
Oh, it's baking light maps.
Oh, is it baking light maps? Oh, that's great.
This is why you just turn off lighting in your game.
Yeah, dude. Auto, go away.
Well, it
just finished. So.
No.
It was a quick bake.
It was a very quick bake. That. Again, this may not work. We'll see. It should be good. HDR, yeah. Should. 4K. Oh, that's right. I got to turn my script on. That's why. It's not much, but yeah, I know, right? So, shit.
What is happening?
I'm just opening stuff.
This is what real development looks like. Everyone else is just an amateur.
Yeah, okay, that works. Should work. Unless something's terribly broken. You know what's happening? I know what's happening. I know exactly what's happening.
Right, it's a script that needs lens flare, right?
Yeah, this is just lens. I'm just gonna show you guys lens flare, and we're done. Here we go. If I'm lucky. There we go. Whoa! So, it's going to be a little hard for me to explain in the context of 10 minutes. I don't really have a lot of time to wind up and explain things. 6 minutes. So what's happening here is that I'm going through a shit ton of objects and I'm making a few of them shiny. In this case, it's making them a lot of them shiny, if not all of them. I was hoping to actually walk through and write some of the code on the spot because it sounded like nobody was going to be showing shaders, but a lot of people showed shaders. And this may not just work because I was planning on writing all this from scratch, and I didn't test this a lot. I should have made a video.
And showed up.
Oh, it's fine. Something like that. Fuck it. Oh god, what is C#?
Just put an F after everything.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
If this doesn't run, I don't know why it's not running.
It's running.
It is running.
No, it's not running though. It's not running right though. Oh no.
Oh, if you're gonna be picky like that.
I'm obviously just a big butthole. Okay, I'm just gonna actually show the code a little bit because that's not running quite exactly how I wanted it to, nor the way it was running on my computer. But that's fine. I have this little object here called material animator. So you see, I just construct it. And I pass it a target, which is just a game object. and then I pass it a type that it is, which is a instance pooled material. And at that point, I just threw a for loop, which is on a coroutine, so that's running once per frame. I just set float bloom to a value here. And what this object here is doing is that whenever I'm done with it, I call dispose. So it's using the C# interface iDisposable. If you're like really into programming, you've probably seen that around before for like any form of network connection. And what that does is whenever it calls dispose, it actually takes all the materials that I've created instances of and then deletes them and cleans it up and then keeps me from generating garbage. So what I can do is in all my scripts, I can just kind of give it a game object and just say, bloom, motherfucker, I want it to be shiny. And then whenever I'm done, I can dispose of it, and that's it. And I'm not going to drag this out too long. But
I'm sorry, is Material Animator your class that you made?
yes, it is. That's the thing that I need to post on. God, I don't know how to not have a full keyboard. Yeah, I just do the FN buttons and all that. Yeah, so this is my own C# class. Starts here. It does quite a few things. It uses object pooling. You can see it has two types. It constructs, and then it just decides the type of constructor it's going to use to configure. And then it gets a little out of hand from there. So, but you can see I have a few calls. I have set color, I have set flow, I have set vector, I have swap material. And these are just like, this is just a lot of code that I found myself writing in a lot of places, because if you are doing little things like animating your use audio. So if you're using like these nice blooms, and every single time I hit one of those, I'm creating duplicates of all the materials on that object. You find yourself doing a lot of just boilerplate code that gets used everywhere. So I guess just to cap this off, I just want to encourage everyone that if you're doing fancy shader things, to think of some of the terrible overhead that you're inducing and just rip off the Band-Aid, or just look at the Git that I'm going to post right after this and steal my code and then not have problems anymore.
Let my stuff overflow, it's fine.
Yeah, so my stuff's a little whack right now, but whatever. I won't drag this out too long, but also object pools. This gets really complicated. Again, I thought I was going to be talking for like 40 minutes for some reason. So it really made it sound that way to me. So there's object pools. That's also its own thing. Yeah.
I'm sorry, again, is that your class or is that a built-in class?
Object pool is half my class, half somebody else's class, but I've long forgotten who I stole it from. So I've had it in like 6 projects by now, and I doubt it looks anything like the old one. I think I stole some logic from a Git repo, and then I stole some logic from some asset store thing I bought, and then I spliced like just in the learning of how do I make an object pool, and I was just pulling sources and throwing code in my project, and when something ran, then I said, okay, that's that, and then I learned from it.
That's why you need an object pool.
We don't have time.
I don't have time, because we are literally out of time. But object pools, like I was saying earlier, they just allow you to create a few instances of an object and then pull out, because memory. Yeah, because memory. That's it. Instead of having 100 things, you can just have 5 and then pull from those 5 when you need them and give it back to the pool when you don't need it. So. Yeah, the most popular use is for bullets. Is instead of creating new bullets every time you fire their gun, you just borrow bullets effectively from the pool. Yeah, I'll just post that on Git along with some better documentation. But yeah, you can do stuff. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm so curious. Why isn't this running?
Has anyone not signed in on a spreadsheet yet? No, I believe you intentionally. Great.
I'm just gonna try to figure this out real quick. You guys do whatever you want, guys. I'm just curious.
Sign up to present.
Oh, no. That was just a sign sheet.
No, yeah, sorry, just to record that you're here.
No, I'm saying like, I have something I want to show.
Oh, sorry, I asked at the beginning. I guess you came in late. Yeah. So yeah, normally we have a sign-up sheet in the beginning, but since there weren't a lot of people here when it started, I asked.
Are you on Slack? Oh yeah.
Okay, is anybody not on Slack?
On the organizational channel.
Okay.
Mention if you want to share something ahead of time, and we can get you on the list before the meeting starts.
But we should do another one of these sometime.
Yeah, totally. We're gonna do more shader stuff. It's a pretty common thing. So thank you everybody for coming out. So like I said, our next meetup is the second Monday of December. And do we know what that's going to be?
A game pitch workshop.
Yeah.
Game pitch workshop.
Oh, motherfucker, that's it. God damn it.
So it's all about honing like your elevator pitch for the game you're working on.
Like you'll bring your game, you'll explain what the game is, and then I explain what challenges you're facing, explain it to people, and then the room can help you come up with a short pitch. Yeah, just how your game, what stands out, what is interesting, and maybe a couple things. Thank you guys for listening.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, guys.